Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, a hot new Dungeons and Dragons source book that just dropped. Everybody's talking about it, and well, they should. It's a major milestone within Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. What I want to talk about today is what Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft becomes within the collection of we're approaching 30 source books now for Dungeons and Dragons. And Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, I won't bury the lead here. It really represents the 5th named setting book, which is actually pretty incredible. All right, so let's just look at Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft in context to just 5th edition D&D 5e, just Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition history. So Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition history starts in 2014, all right? I remember it specifically because I was at Otakon, which is an anime convention that before the pandemic was held every year. And basically I remember, I specifically remember waiting to get the PHP and seeing another person ride down an escalator holding the brand new PHP, and I saw it from like 150 feet away, and I was like, like I gasped, so, and this was 7 years ago. 7 years. We are now 7 years into Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and that's a pretty big deal because, like, one thing is, Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft is the 5th named setting book within Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Okay. And it's really important to understand that it's a named setting book, right? The name of the setting is in the title of the book. And you're like, well, what's the big deal about that? It's a big freaking deal, right? Like, and the reason why is, one, in 5th edition, it was done. In 1st edition and in 2nd edition, it was done all the time, right? They were like, hey, here's your Forgotten Realms source book. Here's your Dragonlance source book. Here's your Greyhawk source book. Here's your world. Here's Oriental Adventures, right? Here's Planescape. Here's Spelljammer, right? You got your source book, right? And it was like, here's an entire book that establishes this setting, right? It seems super simple. In 5th edition, it isn't. It isn't even remotely simple, right? So when you ask, actually, I know this might sound crazy, but actually, Wizards of the Coast had a plan for 5th edition. The plan was that they weren't going to do source books. They were going to do adventure books that mentioned established settings, right? So the biggest one they've done this with is Forgotten Realms. Forgotten Realms is actually the unnamed setting of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. It has no setting book, right? Forgotten Realms is there, and players who have, and many of the 5th edition players are brand new, so they really don't have any context for what Faerun is or Forgotten Realms, but they're expected to know, right? And multiple adventure books are just dropped in that are placed within Forgotten Realms, but Forgotten Realms is never really established, right? So now the reason for this was Wizards of the Coast's idea was that the official world of Dungeons and Dragons was and they've talked about this extensively. Actually, I shouldn't say they've talked about it extensively. They've talked about it officially. They really wanted a multiverse. They're like, well, it's everything. The official, setting of 5th edition is Greyhawk and Forgotten Realms and Planescape and Spelljammer and Oriental Adventures, but you don't get a book for any of them. We're gonna serve up adventures, which are super easy for us to serve up, right? And pretty useless for any good DMs, right? But it's still, we're gonna make our money because even the good DMs will begrudgingly buy them, right? And the noobs will definitely buy them because they literally need them, right? And they don't know any better. They don't know that actually the fifth edition WotC books, by and large, are worse than what you would have written yourself, because they're so distracted. Not because they don't have good writers on them, but because they have 15 good writers on them, none of which are orchestrated and pulled together, right? It's bad. It's bad, okay? So really think about it, all right? Ravenloft is only the fifth named setting book. And I will tell you right now, the setting books that have the settings that have an official core book for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition will break your freaking heart. Listen to them, okay? I'm going to give you the list. All right. Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft is number 5, okay? That is your fifth source book, okay? Eberron is your other 5th edition source book, a reprint of a fan-made contest winner world that came out in 3rd edition. Okay, why on earth should Eberron have an official book and Planescape, Dark Sun, Spelljammer not have, and Forgotten Realms and Dragonlance and Greyhawk not have a book? That is astounding, right? I don't know if I'm opposed to Eberron having a book, but like the idea that Eberron would get a book before Dark Sun is just ludicrous. Or Birthright, or any of the amazing settings that exist for Dungeons & Dragons. Eberron? Really? Jeez, like D&D steampunk? Come on. All right. Then, here's the next one. Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. Now, actually, I really like that setting. I think it's fantastic, and I actually think it's by far the very best named setting for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. But that's the next one is Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. Pretty interesting. The Explorer's Guide to Wildemount would be there and would be the next source book, right? And just to be clear, right? Why does Wildemount exist? Because of the critters, because of Matthew Mercer. It was totally unplanned for 5th edition, right? That book exists because of momentum, okay? Matthew Mercer has become the #1 evangelist for Dungeons & Dragons. Nothing, absolutely nothing Wizards of the Coast is able to accomplish or done has even accomplished a quarter of what Matthew Mercer has done to make Dungeons & Dragons a bigger, broader community and to spread the game more. No one expected it. When 5th edition started, nobody thought that someone outside of Wizards Coast would be the biggest champion of the game that it's ever existed. But that fact is undeniable. Matthew Mercer is without a doubt the greatest dungeon champion of spreading Dungeons and Dragons that has ever existed in any edition. Right? Maybe Gary Gygax can be said to be a bigger spreader of it because he did legit get the television show, right? But even the television show now is by and large forgotten, okay? All right. So you have Wildemount, you have Eberron, you have Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, okay? Oh my gosh, what are the last two of the official named setting books of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition? Oh, Mythic Odysseys of Theros and Explorer's Guide to Ravnica. There you go. Synergy books from Magic the Gathering. Two settings that not a single Dungeons & Dragons, I don't believe that even a single Dungeons & Dragons actual fan ever asked for those books. They're essentially free source books for Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons owns both Magic the Gathering and they own D&D, right? Almost all of the art in these books is reprint, right? And the worlds themselves don't even need to be written because they've already been written for Magic the Gathering, right? So basically they're discount books for Wizards of the Coast. So when the Wizards of the Coast made them, half the money you could just put right back in your pocket because the art's done and the writing's done. And you just need some touch-ups. That's all you need, right? So it'd be like bringing a painter into your house to just paint the molding. Like it's going to be a super cheap job, right? And you could, whoever's in your house that wanted a new paint job, you could be like, new paint job. And you're like, is it? So 5 setting books for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. You have Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. You have Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. You have Eberron, okay? You have Mythic Odysseys of Theros, and you have the Explorer's Guide to Ravnica, which means that 40% of the books, of the named setting books for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, are literally from Magic the Gathering and are not even Dungeons and Dragons settings, right? So the reality is I am very excited for Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, but it is a milestone, all right, within Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition history. And we need to take a minute to realize where we've landed, right? And this is incredibly sad. Wizards of the Coast's hesitancy to just do setting books, right, has landed us into this bizarre, no pun intended, Frankenstein world where the books that made it through are just like, you're like, okay, we have 2 MTG books, we have Ravenloft, we have Eberron, and we have a new setting, right? A new setting, and we don't have tons of classic settings, right? No Birthright, no Planescape, no Spelljammer, no official book for Forgotten Realms, no official book for Greyhawk, right? And just the list, and also, like, there's even settings like Oriental Adventures, right? Now, Oriental Adventures would be very difficult to do today. You probably would have to, you would certainly have to give it a new name, and you would also maybe need to hire all Asian, at minimum, you would need to have an Asian lead, right? It might even be an all-Asian writing suite, But the reality is there's just so many epic settings. Dragonlance, right? It's astounding, right? There's so many books that we have been specifically denied, right? And the 5 we have, the majority of them the majority of them are either unnecessary or nonsense. 40% of them are complete nonsense. No one asked for the MTG books, right? And they have displaced other real settings. So while I am very happy that we have Ravenloft, I am desperately sad that setting continues to be one of the most brutal, difficult, just clearly overlooked aspects of Dungeons and Dragons. And the Wizards of the Coast just has not found the model to make this work in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. That's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Are you happy with the 5 named setting books that have made it through the gauntlet of design that Wizards of the Coast has arbitrarily erected for what will and will not be setting books in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.